Greetings and salutations, and thank you for clicking on the video. In this video, I hope to pass along some pearls of wisdom to those of you who want to start seriously podcasting or producing YouTube videos about Linux or about anything else. And in this video, I'm going to talk about some basics of good broadcasting that I learned over the years. I worked in radio and television for 20 years. I started out as a part-time disc jockey and part-time engineer, and I worked my way up to become part of upper management. The highest position that I held was operations manager, which is the number 2 man below the general manager in most radio stations. And at one point in time, I worked for a company where I was directly in charge of 8 radio stations and a television station. During that time, I also did 2 5-hour radio broadcasts a day, 6 days a week, on 2 different radio stations. And the way I was able to do that, of course, was that a lot of that was recorded. I didn't stay there for 10 hours a day. And while I was doing that, I was also producing lots of radio and television commercials, and then doing the administrative stuff, overseeing the operations and programming of the radio stations, consulting with the television station. I didn't have direct control over that, but I did oversee it. And I was also in charge of programming, this time in the sense of code, for the automation systems for the radio stations. So, yeah, I had a lot of balls in the air. And the way I did that was by following some simple rules that I learned along the way and also learned in school. And we're going to go into those in this video, and we're going to talk about how they apply to new media. Radio and TV is a different animal from on-demand media that we have on the internet today, whether it be YouTube or a podcast download or whatever it is. But I still believe some of the basics apply, so that's what I'm going to try and pass along in this video, okay? We're going to talk about program planning and format. We're going to talk about building an audience and how to keep them around. And we're going to talk about dealing with trolls. And we'll also delve a little bit into some effective communication tips at the end of the video. Before we get into all of that, I would like to read you just a little bit of a speech that Edward R. Murrow gave to the Radio Television News Directors Association in Chicago in 1958. He was talking about television back then, but I think what he said applies even today, especially the little bit that I have quoted from the speech. For those of you who don't know, Edward R. Murrow was probably the most influential person in the creation of broadcast news, starting out with radio in the early 30s and television into the 50s, and he was very influential in his time. And he said in this speech, "I have no technical advice or counsel to offer those of you who labor in this vineyard that produces words and pictures. You will forgive me for not telling you that instruments with which you work are miraculous, that your responsibility is unprecedented, or that your aspirations are frequently frustrated. It is not necessary to remind you that the fact that your voice is amplified to the degree where it reaches from one end of the country to the other does not confer upon you greater wisdom or understanding than you possessed when your voice reached only from one end of the bar to the other. All these things you know." So with that in mind, let's jump in here and start talking about some of these different points. First thing is understanding the concept of program planning and format. And this is very, very important. Programs should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And you should know where you're going to end up before you start recording or open up a microphone or turn on a webcam. You need to know what your end goal is, what information you want to impart to the audience, and have some idea of how you're going to do that. Take time to plan out what you want to say before you turn on a microphone. The internet is an interesting animal in that we have the technology to essentially turn on a microphone or a webcam at any time and record. It is very easy to do. And sometimes I see some folks who have obviously just turned on the microphone and started talking. Sometimes that works out great, sometimes it doesn't. It's always best to have some sort of idea of what you're going to do. And if you're going to be talking about something, it is always best to research your content as much as possible. Know as much about what you want to talk about as you can possibly get information on before airtime. Even if that's just taking a couple of minutes to search Google and make sure that you have your terms correct and that sort of thing, it makes a big difference. You will be way more confident when you open up a microphone and start talking. When you're trying to figure out what to put into your program, what you need to do is assign value to each element. And what that means is that everything that you say, every thought that you have, every concept that you put across, it has to have some sort of relevant meaning to the audience you're trying to talk to. And value is a funny thing because value is perceived. For instance, if you have a Timex watch that you went down to the drugstore and bought for $20, it will probably keep time rather well. You can also buy yourself an expensive $10,000 Rolex watch, and that will probably keep time pretty good too. So from a purely functional point of view, both of those watches will do what you want them to do. But the value that's assigned to them is perceived. The Rolex is better built, probably made out of gold. You can go on and on. Why that watch is $10,000 compared to the $20 Timex watch. So do keep in mind that value is something that is perceived by the audience. And so you have to get inside their head and you have to figure out what they want and try and give it to them. One good rule of thumb is to realize that any element that's in any program, whether it be a video program or an audio program, has got to do one of two things. It either has to inform or it has to entertain. And if it does not do either one of those things, then you should not put it in there. It's really that simple. So the next goal or rule here is when in doubt, throw it out. If you don't know what you're going to do with something, if you're not confident about it, if you don't know how valuable it would be to people who are watching, don't bother with it. Just let it go. Set time limits upon yourself. In broadcasting, we always were working with time limits. We had a certain allotted amount of time that we could do what we needed to do. And even like in a disc jockey show where you're playing records and things like that, there's a time limit to how long that you can talk between the records and not drive people away and go, I really want to hear some music, shut up, you know? So what you do is you set a time limit on yourself. And in that case, it's 20 or 30 seconds between different elements in the program, including, songs and commercials and things like that. So when you're doing things that are podcasts, these usually come out as informational talking shows, and you may shoot for an hour. You may think that you can come up with an hour's worth of stuff to talk about on a weekly basis. That's fine. In my case, when I started seriously doing videos about Linux on YouTube, I set a goal for myself that each video should be 20 to 30 minutes long. So therefore, these videos are in a vlog format. They are not necessarily tightly edited videos because I just wanted it to be like, hey, thanks for hanging out with me. This is what we're going to talk about this time around. Now, I have some videos up here that are much longer. If I have guests like Jeremy O'Connell, we've done a couple of videos together. If I have a concept that I'm trying to get across, like how to install Linux on a system, those videos tend to run longer because I'm going to take the time to talk about all of the concepts I want to get in there. And I just recently posted a video called Beginner's Guide to Bash, which runs about an hour and 14 minutes. But I had a lot to talk about in there, so it's okay to break that rule. But for general videos, I always shoot for 20 to 30 minutes. Now, some people complain and they say my videos are too long and that I talk too much and they don't have time to watch them. My attitude on that is, I'm sorry, but if that's the case, then you can find content elsewhere. Many of the people who watch my channel tell me that they enjoy listening to the videos, they appreciate the longer format, and they also appreciate the time I take to explain concepts. So when I do those videos, I try not to cram too much into each video. Sometimes it's just about one thing. But when I get done with it, I've gotten all the information that I want to get across there. So set time limits on yourself and figure out what you're going to do. And of course, if you're going to be doing daily videos, if you've committed yourself to, I'm going to do a video a day, doing an hour a day is going to get old really fast. You're going to start running out of things to put in there. So if you're going to do that, you might want to set a time limit on yourself of 5 or 10 minutes. If you're going to be doing it once a week, then maybe 30 minutes to an hour. In my case, I place no time limit on myself as far as the time between videos. If I don't have anything to talk about, I'm not going to post anything. If I have a whole bunch of stuff to talk about, I may post 1 or 2 videos in a day, and 3 or 4 days in a row. So that's one of the nice things about working with the YouTube system, is that you're not obligated to fill a certain block of airtime at any time. People who do podcasts probably will try and do it once a week, and they probably want to have it consistently available on a certain day. Whatever works for you, but set time limits. And be consistent. You're going to see that all throughout this presentation. Once you get your plan in place, and this is what you're going to do, stick with it for a while. A big mistake that people who don't understand how broadcasting works, the big mistake that they make is they'll do 1 or 2 little episodes or shows or whatever, and they won't get a huge response, and then they'll go, well, that's not working, I'm going to move on. They expect results way too quickly. It takes a long time for an audience to come to you. It takes a long time for people to find out you're there, and if you're doing something good, then what you're doing is going to get shared, and it's just going to take a while for that to happen, especially if you're working on the internet. On the internet, it's really hard to promote yourself because the internet, basically, the audience could be anybody in the world. So whatever you start out with, give it time. Now, if you're doing something and you've been doing it for, I don't know, a couple of months and nothing's happening, it's not going anywhere, yeah, it's probably time to reconsider and think about doing something else in a different way. But don't do 1 or 2 little episodes and throw them up there, a couple of videos, and then go, nobody cares. Give it a little time. Be consistent. So the next thing that I want to talk about is building an audience and keeping them. And rule number 1 with that is that they have to like you. They have to think of you as a friend. That is the number 1 rule of broadcasting. And people break that rule all the time on YouTube. They put things up that may have a few little things in them that are interesting to watch, but they themselves come across as being some sort of a jerk, or they don't sound very enthusiastic about what they're doing. They don't have any confidence in it, and I'm not going to stick around and watch something like that. I'm just not. So if you want friends, you're going to have to be a friend. If you want people to watch your videos, listen to your podcast, you're going to have to be likable. So work on that. Be positive about what you are saying, and we'll talk more about that at the end of the video. The next thing is to try to see things from their perspective, and we're talking about your audience, okay? So a great example of that was given to me a long time ago by a radio consultant named Dan O'Day, who said that one time he got on an airplane and the stewardess stood up and picked up the microphone and talked to the passengers and says, "Please remain seated. We're going to be doing a food service now." And he heard that and he said to himself, "A food service? That doesn't sound very appetizing now, does it?" No, it doesn't. So he said that what the waitress could have said was, "Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. We're going to bring you food. Aren't you hungry? You've been on this plane for a while. Just wait a few moments and somebody will bring you your dinner." Now, doesn't that sound a lot more inviting than saying to somebody, "We're going to be doing a food service"? The mistake that the stewardess made was she was expressing herself from the viewpoint of the airline. She was not expressing herself from the viewpoint of the audience. So always try and get into their heads, figure out what they're going to be thinking next, and then respond to it. And talk about things from your audience's perspective, not yours. It's a very easy thing to fall into, but don't do it. Try and always think about what you're going to say and how it relates to the people who would be consuming your content. Avoid the temptation to rant or argue with your guests. YouTube makes it super duper easy to throw a video up, and you sometimes might find yourself getting all ticked off about something, and you want to throw up a video and you just want to rant and vent. That, if you are trying to build an audience, is not going to help you. It might make you feel better in the short term. You might get a few people who come along and go, yeah, hell yeah, man, I agree with you. But what it's going to do in the long term is it's going to be a turnoff. And if you're trying to grow an audience and keep an audience around, you shouldn't do it. Now, this is a rule that I'm throwing out there that I've broken myself on YouTube, just because it is so easy and it is so tempting to do that. And every time that I have done that, I usually end up feeling quite guilty about it, and I'll take the video down, even if a lot of people agreed with me, because they usually generate a lot of bad energy. They generate a lot of bad comments, and essentially, if you take a side, you're alienating people. And you want to be positive. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't express your opinion, but just be respectful of other people's opinions in the process. And don't present yourself in a way that you are seeming to be elitist, or that you are seeming to be judgmental of people who don't agree with you. You can certainly express your opinion, but do it in a kind way with tact, and you'd be surprised how far that will get you. Never argue with a guest. If you have a guest on your podcast or your video or whatever, do not get in a heated discussion with them and then actually argue with them. I mean, to the point of being frustrated and raising your voice. It makes you look like a jerk, even if you're right. When you bring a guest onto a broadcast, it's really what you're doing is you're trying to make them feel warm and welcomed, and you want to be in control. You control the conversation, of course, but at the same time, you want to be very kind and very tactful. Even if the person that you're talking to is saying something that you know is wrong, you can politely say, well, I disagree with you, whatever the deal is. You can playfully argue with the person, but always keep in mind that you need to appear to be sociable and likable in those sorts of situations. And sometimes it's better just not to have a guest that you know you're going to rant with. Don't do that unless you can do it in a way that respects their point of view and respects your point of view at the same time and makes you both come out looking good. If you can do that, great. Have fun with it. The next thing is be honest. Do not start out a video by showing you, saying, I'm going to give you the greatest stuff in the world, and then there's not much to it. Do not choose titles for videos that are just clickbait. I mean, yeah, you want to put something interesting up there. I mean, I've done things like, I posted a video a long time ago where I did a review of Ubuntu GNOME 14.04, and I said, the greatest distro ever, because I was really enjoying it at the time. Those things are okay, but make sure that you're being honest about what you are presenting. And when you're starting out your videos, you may want to take a few minutes and explain, we're going to talk about this, this, and this, like I've done in this video. But make sure that you're being honest about what you're going to be delivering. Stay focused on what you're talking about. A lot of YouTube videos, especially the free-form ones where it's like somebody just talking, they tend to wander. A little bit of that is okay. I mean, if somebody's really digging you and they're digging what you're saying, that's awesome. You know, you can wander off a little bit and talk about other things. But really, you need to be keeping in mind that you need to stay focused on the topic or the content that you are focusing on right now. And when you do that, it is going to make for a much smoother presentation. I'm guilty of wandering. I do it in some of my videos, a few of them. I have tried to I've tried to keep that to a minimum and had to work on that myself, because this is a learning experience for me. Number one, doing things on YouTube and doing this sort of content. When I was on the radio, there was always something that told me what I was supposed to say and what I was supposed to be focused on, just the way it was done. I mean, we had very strict time limitations, formats. Even when I was doing talk shows and things like that, the guest was going to be there for this allotted amount of time. We needed to get through that. Since you don't have that clock on the wall that's nagging you on YouTube, then sometimes it's real easy to wander off and go in different directions. But try and stay focused as best as you can. And once again, be consistent. If you're going to do something this way, if you have found a way that's comfortable for you and seems to resonate well with your audience, don't change it up. Stick with it. Do what you said you were going to do and keep at it. And that will help to bring people back. People will come back if you are consistently giving them something that they can use. Once again, it goes back to assigning value. If they find it entertaining or they find it informative, they're going to keep coming back. If you change the program on them, they might not like what you do. So be careful when making changes. It's not that you can't, spice things up every now and again, but always come back to the same point. And when you're done with something, you're done with it. If you find that a series of videos or something that you're working on is not working, move on to something else. But while you're doing it, be consistent. So this is something that applies mainly to new media, but I can tell you from my 20 years in broadcasting that I opened up a lot of hate mail. And when I worked on the radio, of course, we always had telephones in the studio and we gave out telephone numbers. And people would call you and tell you straight up to your face, dude, you suck. What are you doing? Where's the other guy? Why are you here today? Did Bob leave? Because you suck, man. I hope that you're not Bob. I hope that Bob comes back. And literally, people will tell you the most incredible things. They will walk up to you on the street and you'll tell them, well, I work here. And they'll go, well, you suck. I really can't stand that station. I don't know why you do what you do. And people will be very direct and honest about it. But on the internet, it's even worse because it's usually written directly to you and it's posted publicly. It's not something that somebody said to you on the phone. It's something that somebody has posted in a forum somewhere, the comments section, that everybody can read, and it makes it worse. Do not argue with trolls. Delete them. Don't give in to the temptation to tell them that they're jerks, because if you do that, you're going to come off looking like a jerk, especially if you're doing it in a public forum. If somebody posts something that is so repugnant that you can't stand it, just delete it. It is your forum. It is your channel. It is your post. Control it. And if you don't like something that somebody posts, get rid of it. Now, that doesn't mean that you should automatically delete something from somebody just because they disagree with you. Of course not. If they are polite and they word it well, most of the time I will leave it alone. I may or may not respond to it. If I feel like that I can respond to that person in a way that's not going to end up turning into a flame war, then I'll do it. Sometimes somebody will post something where they disagree with me. I'll just leave it alone. I'll just let it stand. That's what the comment section is for. It's for people's comments. But don't let people abuse it, because there are people out there that will. If you can, depending on what forum you're working in, you can do this on YouTube, you can do it with the comments section, put content filters on forums to screen out obscenities and other unwanted posts. This goes a long, long way. So yeah, just think of every dirty word that you don't want posted on your stuff and then put it into the filter. And also think of any other content that you don't want there. For instance, on my YouTube channel, I do not allow people to post obscenities, because I want it to be a friendly place. One of the things that really bugs me about YouTube is that you'll find a video you really like, and then you'll look down in the comments section and people are posting the nastiest things, and it's a big turnoff. And a lot of big corporations who have YouTube channels don't pay any attention to the comments section at all. They don't know how to set up filters. So it could be a video about a travel agency or something like that. And then you look down and people are calling people names and they're posting nastiness. I don't want to see that. Most people don't want to see that. So filter that stuff. It makes a big difference if you're going to be in a forum or if you're going to deal with the comments to do that. Other things I screen are any links to pretty much anything. I don't want people posting links that I don't know where it's going, because they could post a link to anything in those comments, and it reflects on me because I allowed it to be there. Another thing that I don't let people post is code. So if you are trying to help somebody and you post a bunch of code and it doesn't post, that's because there's a filter there. Because anybody could post any dangerous command they want to in a comment, and a lot of people who watch my videos are new to Linux and they wouldn't know that it was bad. So therefore, I hold those for approval. And if it's something that I agree with and I know it's not going to hurt anybody, I'll let it through. If somebody puts a link in a comment, I'll look at the link first to see where it's going and what it's about. And if I approve it, I'll let it through. And take the time to read through your comments and posts. I know that it gets harder and harder over time, but really what you need to do is just make it a daily routine to speed read through everything that everybody posts. Because you want to catch things that are negative. And you also want to catch things that you know you need to respond to. You want to appear to be responsive to your audience. You don't want to just ignore them, but at the same time, you don't want to just let them do whatever they want to do. So what you can do is set up an email account to have all of the YouTube comments sent to. That's exactly what I do. So I get, a lot of emails in a day, 40 or 50 emails sometimes, and it just shows a snippet of the comment. And then I will reply to the ones that I feel like replying to, or take action on the ones that I need to get rid of or do something about. And one of the ways to do this and still be effective, you can't respond to everybody's comment. There's just no way in the world. There's too many of them. But what I do is look for and respond to question marks. If somebody asks a question, they ask it very concisely and they ask it up front. And if I know the answer, I will jump in and say something, or I'll try and point them in a direction where they can get some information. I mean, that's a big part of what I do on YouTube anyway. And so therefore, I will do that. I look for the question marks. I don't answer every question. I just don't have time. But what's really cool about the Easy Linux community is that a lot of people jump in and ask those questions when they see the video. Thank you for doing that, or answer those questions from inside the community. That's great. That means that there's interaction going on and people care. So that's wonderful. But I do try and look for question marks, answer people's questions, or respond to in some way things that are, really compelling. Be kind to those who are kind to you. If somebody is saying that you're great and wonderful and being sincere about it, then you need to thank them. And then you need to let them know that you got the message. And so therefore, I also try and do that as well. When people are really just very thankful and very kind, they have very kind words to say, I always try and let them know that I appreciate that. And once again, be consistent. Be consistent. Make it a routine during your day to go through these posts, see what's there, and take any appropriate action that you need to, depending on what the posts are. I think that that's really important in new media. You can't really ignore these forums, because if you do, then people are going to get turned off. They're going to be like, this guy doesn't care. He's not paying attention. And I think that all of this stuff put together has been one of the reasons that my YouTube channel has become as successful as it has. It's just working with people and being fair and honest about it. So that's important. Effective communication, and I forgot to change the color on the title in the slide. Oh well, see? Not perfection. We're not going after perfection. We're just trying to do the best we can, gang. All right, the first thing is to be positive. Always be positive. If you come across as being negative, if you come across emitting bad vibes and bad energy, and this goes back to avoiding ranting and raving about things and arguing with people, if you're positive, people will be attracted to that. Positive attracts positive. You will get a good reaction from your audience. Even if you need to talk about things that are difficult to talk about, even if you do have a negative subject to talk about, you can do it in a positive and kind way. And when you do that, I think people really respond to that. If you get on there and go, well, this is just a bunch of BS and I don't like it and blah, 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 blah. Yeah, the people who agree with you will probably go, all right. But the people who don't know what you're talking about or don't agree with you are going to get turned off. It's going to alienate them. So try and be positive. Be careful with your humor. Make sure that your humor is positive and funny and Not that I got a really twisted sense of humor. I've gotten in trouble on a couple of videos by throwing some stuff out there, and I found pretty quick that people in the Linux community can't take a joke. So I try and watch that myself. Speak clearly and take your time. If you're talking very fast, then people tend to not be able to hear what you're saying. If your videos have any length to them, they're probably not going to be watching the screen. They're probably going to be listening only. And if that's the case, then people with TV, it was figured out a long, long time ago, going back to Edward R. Murrow and a producer that worked with him named Don Hewitt. What Don Hewitt figured out back in the early 50s was that people listened to television way more than they watched it. So the words and the sound were actually twice as important as the pictures. And that's the truth with even modern communications. Now, if you're doing an audio-only podcast that you're getting people to download off of Apple or something, iTunes or something, then of course this doesn't apply. But you need to speak clearly and take your time with what you have to say. Because people, if they can't understand you and if they don't know what you're saying, then they're not going to be paying very close attention. You're going to lose them. Concentrate on what you're saying, not how you're saying it. Sometimes I see people who are doing videos and they don't have a lot of public speaking experience. They don't know a lot about broadcasting, and they are really getting tripped up on their own words. And they're doing that because they're constantly trying to hear themselves and think about what they're saying. Just be yourself. Just be yourself. And don't use headphones if you're doing audio-only stuff. If you're doing the recording part of it, put your headphones on to make sure that you are, not distorting or blasting the levels or anything like that. But once you actually start talking, take them off. If you have no reason to be wearing earbuds or headphones, then don't wear them. And if you are in a situation where you need your earbuds to hear your guest or your co-host, don't feed your own voice back through the headphones. Just listen to them. Listening to yourself will trip you up. Now, in radio, we had to listen to ourselves because we would put on a pair of headphones and then we would be able to hear the audio that was mixed under our voices. But a trick that I was taught way back early a long time ago was, when I first started out in radio, old crusty disc jockey told me this. He said, don't turn the volume up loud enough where you can hear yourself. Just turn it up loud enough where you can hear the record playing under you or the music or the other person talking. And that way, you're not going to get distracted by your own voice. I think that makes a big difference there. Anytime that you have a difficult to understand concept that you're trying to explain it 3 different ways. I just did that. I did that with concentrate on what you're saying, not how you're saying it. This is a trick that I have done over and over and over again in my videos. So you would say the same point 3 times from 3 different perspectives, and this gives people time to process what you're trying to explain. It's an old trick and it works really well. If you just blurt out, don't wear headphones because then you hear your own voice and it distracts yourself, people might not understand what you're talking about. So this is a trick that you can do to explain difficult content that you're trying to explain, concepts that you're trying to get across. It goes back to taking your time. And it's a good trick and it works really well. Avoid inside jokes. Now this is something that I hear on a lot of podcasts between 1 or 2 or 3 hosts. They will refer to something and have a good giggle about it, but they won't explain it. And that is a huge audience turnoff. It makes people feel like that they are left out. If you're going to bring something up in the conversation, explain it for those who do not understand what you're talking about. Then you can tell the joke, and then everybody will laugh. It is something that is used to, morning teams on the radio years ago. It's not so much a big deal today as it was years ago, but years ago we used to have these mammoth morning shows with 5 different voices, and it was so frustrating to me when some guy would get on there and start talking about something that I didn't completely understand, and everybody else is giggling in the background. I felt like I missed something, man. I just wanted to move on. So when I actually got to a point where I was programming radio and television stations, I always made it a point to tell my morning shows, hey, don't do that, because it is a huge turnoff. I remember my dad cussing at the radio when I was a kid, because people used to do that. And I never lost that. Of course, my dad was not a broadcaster by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still something that resonated with me. So avoid inside jokes, avoid talking about things that your audience is not going to get, or only the few select members of your audience will get. Those things are big turnoffs. And once again, be consistent. Be consistent. If you're going to do this stuff, keep it up if you want to be successful. Don't let the trolls get you to a place where you are, angry. If you're angry, the worst thing that you can do is turn on a microphone. Walk away. Think it out. Take a break. Skip a show. Run a rerun. Do whatever it takes. If you can't say something in a positive way, then you don't need to put it on the radio or the television or in a video or a podcast. It doesn't need to happen, because it's just going to end up being a turnoff and affecting you at the end. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is my presentation. I hope it does some folks some good. And it's coming from 20 years of broadcasting and about 9 years now posting YouTube videos, also doing other podcasts through the years. I did a podcast called Interface years ago. I think that one was a little bit before its time. It didn't take off, but these are all from my experiences, learning, and I hope that you guys can take this and do something with it, especially those of you who are going to be talking about Linux, because Linux needs all the help it can get, and it needs all of the podcasts, and it needs all of the outreach on the internet there is, because Linux is not talked about in mainstream media. There are no commercials for Ubuntu or OpenSUSE running on television and radio. This is not a product, it's a community. So the outreach is the most important thing. So thank you for listening. I do appreciate it. Now, do check out Easy Linux on the web. Check out Easy Linux on Facebook. And also check out freedompenguin.com for lots of cool stories about Linux written by contributors such as myself. We will do this again soon. Thanks for listening.